In this video, we're going to be talking about how to solve angle measures in circle graphs. In a recent election, there were 6 candidates and 4,300 total votes. The table below summarizes the votes by candidate. This information is also presented in a circle graph. Find the central angle measure x degrees for the Mendez slice of the circle graph. Do not round. So in this particular skill, in general, angle measures and circle graphs, they're going to be giving you information and asking you to represent that original information in a different format. Sometimes they ask you to find the central angle measure like it is now. Sometimes they ask you to find the number of votes that belong to a specific person. And sometimes they can ask you for a percent, or they will give you information using percents, which is not the case in this problem, but we will see one of those later on in the video. No matter what they're asking you for, we can use a proportion to solve, as long as we set up part to whole. Okay, so as you can see over here to the side, we have a shell of a proportion, part on top, whole on the bottom, is equal to another part on top, whole on the bottom. Here, we're going to look at the information given to us, and on one side we're going to set up our information, and on the other side will be a different type of information. So first off, we're going to look for our numbers. They've given us 4,300 total votes. They've given us individual voter results. So in our case, we're looking specifically for the Mendez number of votes because they're asking for the Mendez slice of the circle graph. So here you see we have, as far as votes go, we have a whole amount of votes, the total of votes, and the part of the votes that belong only to Mendez. Okay? Because we have both the part and the whole, that's going to be 1/2 of our proportion. Okay? So on this side, we're going to put in the information for votes. Okay. On the other side is really dictated by the question that they ask, because the proportion has to be set up to answer their question. So the right-hand side of our proportion is going to go back to what they're asking us for, which is the central angle measure in degrees. So the central angle measure. A central angle measure is simply like a slice of a pie or a piece of pizza. So when you're looking at this circle graph here, they're asking us for the angle measure of the Mendez section. So a central angle essentially has its vertex on the center of the circle. So we're looking for this angle measure here, central angle measure for Mendez. Okay. The central angle measure for Mendez is the part of the whole circle. Okay, part of the whole circle. So on this side of our proportion, what we're going to be using for information is degrees of the circle. Degrees of the circle. Now, this is our proportion for this particular problem. Votes on one side, degrees on the other. It won't always be that way. You really have to stop and look at the information they've given you and the question that they're asking you. And we'll go through a couple more examples after this one so you get more comfortable with the process. So we're going to set up our actual proportion using numbers. Part to whole for votes is equal to part to whole to degrees. So the part of the votes that belong to Mendez is 946. The whole amount of votes, they told us up here, was 4,300. That is going to be equal to part to whole in terms of degrees. Now, we have our unknown number of degrees, and that's just the section for Mendez. And you have to stop and think, is that the part or the whole? Well, this is just part of the circle graph. Okay, so that's our part. That's our unknown number of degrees. Okay. We do, however, need a number to go down here in the denominator representing the whole of the degrees, but they don't actually give us that number. So you need to think back to what you know about a circle. How many degrees are in a circle? A full circle has 360 degrees. So that's not going to be a piece of information they give you. They're assuming that you know that. Okay, so proportion 946 over 4,300 is equal to x over 360. From here, you're going to use your cross products. 946 times 360 is equal to our other diagonal as well. So with your calculator, you're going to take 946 times 360, and I get 340,560. And with cross products, they're always the same. So this diagonal is also 340,560. So we're looking for some number times 4,300 will equal 340,560. And I don't know what that is off the top of my head, so instead of trying to guess and multiply this way, I'm going to go in reverse and divide instead. So our 340,560 divided by the 4,300 gives us 79.2. The degrees that belongs to Mendez is 79.2 degrees. It said not to round your answer, so we're going to leave that decimal just like that. 79.2, in terms of looking at the circle graph, does seem reasonable. It's not quite a 90-degree angle here, so I feel comfortable with that answer as well. Looking at a second problem, again, you see our circle graph, and we're going to use part to whole equals part to whole in our proportion. As part of a survey, 2,400 people were asked to name their favorite sport to watch. The circle graph below summarizes their answers. The central angle for the soccer slice is 115 2/10 degrees. How many of the people named soccer as their favorite sport to watch? So here, again, looking to our information, what information did they give us? They gave us 2,400 people were surveyed. They told us the soccer slice represents 115.2 degrees of the circle. Remember, we have in our brain, we know that 360 degrees represents the whole amount of a circle. And they're asking us how many people name soccer as their favorite sport to watch. That's what they're asking us. How many people prefer soccer to watch? So, on one side, they gave us a question and a total number of people surveyed. So on one side, we're going to use information for people. And on the other side, we have a part for degrees that belongs to soccer. You see it here in the circle. And we also know the whole is 360 degrees. So this other side of the proportion is going to be degrees. Okay, so we have our shell there, part to whole equals part to whole, people on one side, degrees on the other. Now we're going to set it up with our numbers. So, people, it's asking how many prefer soccer. And soccer is the part. So our unknown is the numerator on the people side. Our whole is the 2,400 people surveyed. And we're going to set that equal to the degrees of the circle, part to whole. The part belonging to soccer is 115.2, and the whole degrees of the circle is 360. From there, you're going to use your cross products. We're going to multiply 115.2 times 2,400, and I get 276,480. Cross products are always the same, so this diagonal is also 276,480. Something times 360 equals 276,480. Working backwards, we're going to divide by 360, and we get 768. Okay. So 768 people prefer soccer. In our final question, we're still using the same process, part to whole equals part to whole, but this time the data they give us, or the information they give us, is a little bit different. It says in a recent election there were 6 candidates and 4,300 total votes. The table below summarizes the vote percentages by candidate. This information is also represented in the circle graph. Find the central angle measure x for the DeWitt slice in the circle graph. Do not round. So the difference here is that our data is given to us in percents this time. We hadn't seen that in any of our other examples. But looking to our numbers, we have 4,300 total votes. They're asking us for the central angle measure for DeWitt. And then they've given us a bunch of information in percents. Remember that percent means out of 100. So when I'm looking at Mendez, this means 22 out of 100, a part of 22 for every 100 votes. Watkins, again, 22 out of 100. Child, 24 out of 100. All the way down to DeWitt, which we're looking for, is 9%, 9 out of 100. So we've got extra information here. We have to make sure we get our proportions set out correctly. I'm going to start this time with the question they're asking us so that we make sure we get that in part of our proportion. So they're asking us for the central angle measure. So one side of our proportion is going to be that angle measured degrees. Oops, excuse me, degrees. The other side of our proportion is actually going to be percent this time, because your percent will split out into a part and a whole. In this particular question, the 4,300 votes will not be used. Okay, it will not go in our proportion. Our other half of our proportion is going to be percents. All right, from here, setting up our proportion, the degrees for DeWitt, our part is the unknown, and our whole is 360 degrees in the circle. So x over 360 is equal to, now we're going, percent is on the other side, and the percent DeWitt uses or represents is 9%. 9% as a fraction is 9 over 100. 9 part to every 100 whole. And then your cross products from there. 9 times 360. And then your cross products dividing by the 100 is 32.4 degrees. 32.4 degrees. And they ask us not to round, so that will be our final answer. Again, this is kind of a long video, but there's a lot involved, a lot going on. Make sure that you're careful about your labels and that you get their question into your proportion. It's got to be part of your proportion. And then just look to see what you have. Part to whole equals part to whole. If you have any additional questions, use your notes and ask a question with your teacher. Thanks.